They say lions are born to hunt, not to protect. But deep inside Zion Canyon, when the night came alive with laughter, not the joyful kind, but the kind that hunts in packs, something ancient stirred. A 6-year-old girl stood alone in a pink dress, her voice buried since the day her mother died. And just as the hyenas closed in, a roar shook the cliffs, not from rage, but from love. This wasn't instinct. This was something else, something sent. Because sometimes, when the world forgets you, heaven sends a guardian not on 2 legs, but 4. Before we begin this unforgettable story, would you mind sharing where you're from in the comments? And if stories of love, loyalty, and second chances move you, please give this video a like and consider subscribing. Zion Canyon, Utah, late autumn, near sunset. The wind whispered low through the towering red sandstone cliffs of Zion National Park, rustling the brittle cottonwood leaves that clung desperately to the last breath of fall. The sky above was a smear of lavender and gold, the sun folding itself behind the canyon's edge as shadows lengthened like fingers across the dry, cracked earth. The air had that biting chill of an evening too eager for winter, crisp and dry, laced with dust and sagebrush, near a small, family-friendly campsite nestled beside a narrow trailhead. Lily Sanders, a 6-year-old girl with curly strawberry blonde hair and porcelain skin, wandered past the last row of tents. She wore a soft pink dress beneath a hand-knitted beige cardigan, white tights already speckled with dust, and tiny hiking boots caked with red clay. Clutched in her hand was a weathered plush bunny, one ear nearly torn off from love and time. Lily was a quiet child, gentle and shy, her voice rarely heard since her mother's death the year before in a car accident. Since then, she had been raised by her grandfather, following him like a silent shadow everywhere he went. Except today. That morning, Walter Sanders, a wiry man in his late 60s with sun-spotted hands and deep creases around his green eyes, had been distracted while preparing a stew over the campfire. Walter had once been a forest ranger and still wore the flannel shirts and utility belts of those days. His voice was rough but kind, and though age had slowed his steps, it hadn't dulled his instincts. Yet, in a moment's lapse, he hadn't noticed Lily slip quietly past the firewood pile and follow a line of butterflies fluttering toward the trees. By the time the sun dropped behind the ridge, Lily had wandered nearly a mile into the outer reaches of the canyon trail, where boulders crowded the path and dry riverbeds twisted like scars through the earth. The deeper she went, the quieter it grew, until even the sound of wind seemed to pause in anticipation. Then, the silence broke, a crackle of brush behind her, a soft chitter, then another. Lily froze. Her breath hitched, turning slowly. She saw them. Hyenas. There were 5 at first, lanky, mottled creatures with hunched backs and muscular jaws. Their dirty gray coats were flecked with the dust of long travel. These were not native to the canyon. These were escapees from an illegal wildlife trafficking ring that had crashed near the Utah-Arizona border weeks prior, a story barely mentioned in local papers. No one knew the pack had survived. No one except Lily, now. The hyenas circled her, their cackling laughter slicing through the cool dusk air. One stepped forward, its eyes gleaming with menace, lips curling back from stained teeth. Lily couldn't scream. She backed into a crevice in the canyon wall, a jagged wedge just wide enough for her small body, clutching her bunny like a talisman. Her dress fluttered in the rising wind, pink fabric glowing faintly in the fading light. Tears welled in her eyes, but her mouth stayed shut. Then, from the opposite end of the narrow trail, something emerged from the darkness like thunder on 4 paws. A low, resonant growl split the air, deep and ancient. The hyenas paused. From behind a rock outcrop, a massive form stepped into the open. Savannah, a lioness. She was enormous, her tawny coat dulled by dirt and travel, her flanks lean but still powerful. A faint scar ran across her left shoulder, a souvenir from a wire snare long ago. Savannah had escaped her captors weeks before, surviving by hunting deer in the canyon's higher ridges. She was never meant to be here, but now, she stood before the child, between her and death, and her yellow eyes burned like molten gold. The lead hyena snarled and stepped forward. Savannah did not move. Instead, she dropped into a crouch, her muscles coiled like springs, tail flicking slowly from side to side. Her roar erupted, not a sound of rage, but of sovereignty. A roar that belonged not just to her, but to the land itself. The hyenas, despite their number, staggered back. One turned, another followed. The pack hesitated, then melted into the shadowy trees with bitter grunts and laughter that now sounded almost nervous. Lily didn't move. Her bunny had fallen to the ground. The lioness turned her head and looked at her. For a second, the world stilled. From the high ridge above them, someone exhaled audibly. Deputy Cole Harrison. 34 had been patrolling the southern ridges for signs of the escaped lioness when he spotted the scene through his binoculars. A former military tracker, Cole was tall and lean, with dark cropped hair and sharp features that always seemed on the edge of a frown. His uniform bore the tan and green of the Zion Park Rangers, and a long scar traced the side of his left wrist, a souvenir from a mountain rescue gone wrong. He was meticulous, quiet, and didn't believe in miracles. Until now. Cole lowered the binoculars slowly, heart thudding against his vest. A lioness, saving a child, he whispered. Behind him, the canyon stretched into silence, broken only by the distant wind and the memory of a roar that seemed to still echo between the stones. He keyed his radio, but stopped. Down below, the lioness was still there, watching over the little girl in the pink dress. Cole Harrison moved quickly but carefully down the ridge trail, his boots grinding into loose shale as the wind picked up from the canyon's mouth. The evening had turned colder since he first spotted the lioness and the little girl. Lily, he assumed. The last golden light had vanished behind the cliffs, and a violet hush now settled over Zion, like a breath held too long. His heart was still racing, not just from the hike, but from what he had seen. A lioness, protecting a child. It defied everything he'd learned in his field training. The ranger station was a modest wooden outpost tucked behind a copse of junipers and pinyon pines, 2 miles from the trailhead. Inside, the air was dry and warm, smelling of old coffee and pine cleaner. A dusty photo of the original Zion Park Rangers hung crooked above the main desk. Cole dropped his backpack, crossed to the wall unit, and picked up the radio mic. Base to rescue dispatch. This is Deputy Cole Harrison. Urgent response requested. I have a possible child in the canyon, and I'm requesting backup with tranquilization support. Wildlife in close proximity. He let go of the button. Silence. No static. No tone. Frowning. Cole tried again. Nothing. He popped the side panel of the base unit, fiddling with the wiring and toggles, his brow creasing deeper. Still dead. He grabbed the portable radio unit. Dead, too. The backup generator was on, but the antenna line was cold. Likely a tree had gone down in last week's windstorm, and no one thought to check the cable. That was the problem with budget cuts. Only 3 rangers covered the entire south quadrant, and 2 were off duty. Cole's jaw tightened. He grabbed his flashlight, holstered his tranq pistol, and headed back into the night. He'd have to handle this himself, for now. Down in the canyon, the fire-colored lioness had curled her body loosely around the girl without touching her. Savannah had chosen a sheltered crevice where the stone curved naturally into an alcove. The boulders cut the wind and held in a whisper of heat. Her yellow eyes flicked toward every sound, an owl's hoot, the distant crack of wood, the soft rustle of leaves under paw, but her focus always returned to the child. Lily sat pressed against the canyon wall, knees to her chest, eyes still wide. At first, every breath from the lioness made her flinch. But gradually, something changed. She stopped trembling. Her breathing slowed. At some point, when her cardigan slipped off her shoulder, she reached forward, tiny fingers sinking into the lioness's warm fur. Savannah didn't move. The gesture was instinctive. A child seeking warmth, and the lioness allowed it. Then Lily did something unexpected. She whispered, "Thank you." The words were so faint, barely carried by the wind, but Savannah blinked slowly, as if understanding in a way that was more than animal. They stayed like that, together, in the silence of stone and shadow, at the same hour. miles away in the lowlands where the canyon flattened into dust and cottonwoods. Walter Sanders sat on the porch of his RV, a mug of lukewarm coffee growing cold in his calloused hands. His silver hair was mussed, and his eyes were trained toward the mountains. Unmoving, he'd noticed Lily's absence just after sundown. At first, he thought she was in the washroom, then the woodshed. Then, he felt it. That cold certainty, the one you earn only with age and loss. He called her name, once, twice, then louder. When silence answered back, he strapped on his worn boots and drove straight to the trailhead. Now. With a flashlight gripped tight and his breath puffing in clouds, he stood near the ranger post and knocked hard on the door. "Cole, you in there?" The door creaked open just as Cole returned from behind the building, frustration darkening his face. "Mr. Sanders, Lily's gone," Walter said flatly, his voice gravel in fear. Cole didn't speak immediately. He stared at the man, at the strain in his voice, the desperate edge. Then he nodded slowly. "I know where she is, but I can't reach anyone. Radios are out." Walter stiffened. "Is she? She's alive," Cole interrupted. "But she's not alone." That made Walter freeze. "What do you mean?" Cole rubbed his face, unsure how to explain it. "A lioness. She's guarding her." Walter's eyes widened, but not with surprise, with something else, something closer to recognition. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, in a voice softer than before, he murmured, "Does she have a scar on her left shoulder?" Cole blinked. "Yeah, deep one. Old." Walter let out a slow breath. "Her name's Savannah." That gave Cole pause. "I found her 15 years ago, when I was still on active duty. She was just a cub, caught in a poacher's trap near the old mineral ravine. Would have bled out if I hadn't cut her loose." His face darkened. The wildlife center took her in. But there were rumors she was sold off. Private collectors. Backdoor deals. I never found out what happened after that. Cole ran a hand through his hair. "She must have escaped. There was a report about an overturned animal transport a month ago near Coral Creek." Walter nodded. She remembered. Remembered what? Compassion. The word hung in the air. Back in the canyon, Lily had dozed off, her head resting lightly against Savannah's flank. The lioness kept her body still, sensing the weight. The moon rose overhead, bathing the two of them in silvery light that turned the red canyon walls to lavender and ghost white. From somewhere deeper in the woods, a coyote yelped and was answered by a far-off howl. The wilderness never slept, but for one night. One small alcove in Zion held a peace so profound it felt sacred. The cold deepened over Zion Canyon as night took hold, seeping into every crack of sandstone and shadowed trail. The once gentle breeze now moved like a whisper of warning between the red rocks. Above, stars flickered across a navy sky, while the pale moon hovered behind a veil of high clouds. But down in the ravine, where the earth dipped between sharp stone walls, warmth was a luxury neither prey nor predator could afford. Savannah lay low, her breathing ragged. Her side throbbed where the old scar had reopened. Hours of guarding the small child beside her had taken their toll. Muscles once tight with power now trembled beneath a coat dulled with dust and dried blood. The first sound was a soft footfall, barely more than a crunch of brittle grass. Then came the guttural snicker. Hyenas. They had returned. There were more now. Their yellow eyes glinted like lanterns in the dark as they emerged from the brush, leaner, hungrier, and bolder than before. Their numbers had nearly doubled since the night prior. Perhaps they'd sensed weakness. Perhaps they'd simply waited for the darkness to tilt the odds back in their favor. Savannah pushed herself up onto trembling paws. She planted herself between Lily and the threat, her head low, her shoulders rigid. A deep growl rumbled from her throat. Warning and defiance rolled into one primal sound. The hyenas hesitated, just for a breath. Then, from Savannah, came the roar. It was not the same as before. It cracked midway, lower and shorter, like an echo of the lioness she once was. Yet still, it sent a ripple of caution through the pack. Lily sat frozen behind her, clutching the plush bunny in one arm. Her knees pulled tight to her chest. Her small pink headlamp had slipped down over one ear. In the panic, her hand found the button. She flicked it on. A cone of white light sliced through the dark and struck the faces of the advancing hyenas. Their cackles quieted. Some blinked, uncertain. The leader snarled low, unimpressed. Savannah's stance began to falter, and then Lily did something she hadn't done in nearly a year. She screamed, "Grandpa!" The word tore out of her like a wildfire breaking free. It echoed off the canyon walls, raw and full of pain and hope. Savannah didn't turn to look, but her ear twitched. The hyenas paused. The sound, so human, so sudden, unnerved them. Grandpa Lily cried again, louder this time, rising to her knees, the light from her headlamp flickering wildly as she turned toward the dark. She was no longer silent, no longer invisible, and somewhere, far beyond the trees and rocks, someone was listening. The cry echoed across the canyon like a flare in the darkness, raw, human, and desperate. "Grandpa!" It sent a jolt through Walter Sanders's chest so sharp that he nearly dropped his flashlight. The wind carried the voice again, clearer this time, from deep within the narrowing gulch below. "Lily," he whispered. Walter, tall and lean despite his age, tightened the strap on his old Ranger backpack and picked up the pace, his boots crunching through brittle leaves and loose stones. The beam of his flashlight bounced wildly across the terrain. Sweat clung to his flannel shirt despite the chill. Behind him, Deputy Cole Harrison kept silent, scanning the trail with practiced eyes. Cole's face, always stoic, was more focused than ever now, his dark brows furrowed beneath the edge of his cap, his jaw locked tight. He moved like someone used to finding things in impossible places, his lean build adapted to quick turns and rocky climbs. But tonight wasn't about search and rescue training. It was about time, and time, they both knew, was slipping fast. "I heard her from that break in the ridge," Walter said, pointing up toward a rocky overpass. "There's a shortcut that cuts behind the narrow stream bed. Used to take school groups up there. They moved as fast as they could under the moonlight, following faint imprints of tiny boots in the soft earth. Brush parted just enough to show where a small child had passed through. But something else was there too. Prints heavier, rounder, paws, and near those claw marks, dragged lines, blood." Walter stopped. "Lion tracks," Cole muttered, kneeling beside one of the prints. "And she's not just limping, she's bleeding." Walter's throat tightened. "We have to hurry." In the shadowed alcove beneath the overhanging rock wall, Lily remained curled beside Savannah. The lioness lay slumped on her side, her breath shallow. One hind leg stiffened at an unnatural angle. Blood matted her fur near her hip, and the claw marks from the earlier struggle with the hyenas had begun to crust and blacken. She had managed to throw one of them against the jagged edge of the canyon, buying enough time for the others to hesitate, to scatter. But it had cost her. Now. Lily's little arms were wrapped around the lioness's broad neck, her tiny head buried in the warmth of the fading pulse beneath Savannah's fur. The headlamp she wore blinked red. Low battery, she didn't notice. Her voice, fragile and cracked from crying, whispered fragments of lullabies she barely remembered, each word barely a breath. "You're okay," she whispered. "You're brave." The moon shifted, casting long beams of silver light into the alcove, just enough to reveal the contrast between the girl in the pink dress and the lioness torn and still, their forms locked in an impossible kind of trust. Then footsteps, crunching gravel, heavy breath, a rustle of fabric and boots against stone. Lily's head lifted, eyes wide. A shadow fell across the alcove entrance. For a second, she froze. But then came the voice. Lily Walter's knees nearly buckled when he saw her. He dropped to the ground without hesitation, arms wrapping around the child in a tremor of relief. "I've got you. I've got you," he whispered, pulling her close. Lily clung to him like she would never let go. Cole stepped in a moment later, breathing hard. His flashlight swept over the scene, pausing on Savannah. The lioness lifted her head weakly at the sound, but didn't growl. She blinked at him, slow, calm, utterly exhausted. Cole approached cautiously and knelt beside her. He wasn't new to injured animals, but this was no ordinary rescue. Still, she didn't move when he reached out. His fingers, calloused and steady, brushed gently against her fur. "She's burning up," he said quietly. "Infection's setting in." Walter adjusted his position to keep Lily warm beneath his coat, and nodded. She saved her. Even now, she's still guarding her. Cole unzipped his jacket and shrugged it off. "Here," he said, wrapping it around Lily's shoulders. "Let's get her out of here." Lily looked up at him, eyes rimmed with red. "Savannah?" Cole met her gaze, then turned to Walter. "We'll have to carry her. If she's too far gone to walk, we don't have another choice." Walter looked down at the Lioness, who remained silent, her head resting on the dirt. "She's trusting us, just like she trusted her." A moment passed, then Cole nodded. "Let's bring them both home." The sun crested over the eastern cliffs of Zion Canyon, brushing the red stone with warm gold. It was the kind of light that made everything feel new again, even for those who had nearly been lost to the dark. Dew glistened on the grass, and the crisp air smelled faintly of pine and morning fire smoke. 3 days had passed since the rescue. Inside the rustic but well-equipped wildlife treatment center, nestled in a quiet grove at the edge of the preserve, Savannah lay under soft lighting in a large, hay-lined pen. An IV ran quietly into her foreleg, and the wound along her hip had been cleaned and stitched. The veterinary team, led by Dr. Elena Ward, a sharp-eyed woman in her late 40s with salt-streaked auburn hair and sleeves always rolled up, had worked through the night to stabilize her. Elena was not known for sentimentality. Years of working with trafficked animals had hardened her. But when she first looked into Savannah's weary amber eyes, even she paused. "This one's got fire," she'd said, and she chose to use it for love. Now. Savannah slept, her body curled in a crescent, breathing steadily. Outside the observation window, Lily stood with Walter and Cole. Lily wore jeans and a soft green hoodie 2 sizes too big, her pink dress long tucked away, though the headlamp she'd worn still dangled from her wrist like a charm. Her hair was combed and braided, and her eyes, once haunted, now held a quiet alertness. "She's going to be okay, right?" she asked, her voice clear and steady. Walter placed a hand on her shoulder. "She's healing, just like you." Cole, standing slightly apart, crossed his arms over his chest. His ranger uniform was clean, but his boots were still dusted with canyon red. He hadn't said much since the rescue, but he watched Lily with quiet awe. He'd never seen a child bounce back like this. Then again, he'd never seen a lion guard, one like that either. 2 weeks later, the world had changed. The photo was taken by a volunteer at the sanctuary named Benji Teller, a freckle-faced 19-year-old with shaggy hair and an old Nikon camera slung around his neck. Benji had been helping muck stalls when he turned and saw it. Lily, now visiting the open range enclosure with Walter, sitting just beyond the fence line, legs crossed in the grass, and Savannah lying down beside her, their heads tilted in the same direction, both watching a cloud drift across the sky. Benji snapped the picture. It went viral within a day. The headline read, "The lion who waited, the girl who roared." TV crews tried to swarm the sanctuary, but access was limited. The staff protected the story. This was not a spectacle. They insisted. It was a miracle. Still, emails flooded in, letters, donations. School children from Vermont to California sent drawings of lions and little girls. One letter, written in crayon, read, "Dear Lily, you are brave like a hero, and Savannah is a hero lion. Please tell her I love her." Elena taped that one to the clinic door. In the weeks that followed, Walter found himself back in Ranger Green, not on duty, but in spirit. He and Cole, after one long afternoon walking the sanctuary perimeter, made a decision. They founded the ROAR program, its mission, to teach children about animal empathy, wilderness survival, and the power of courage rooted in connection. It wasn't just about safety, it was about wonder. The first session welcomed 10 local kids from the Zion foothills. They met rangers, learned how to track animals ethically, and sat in a quiet circle where Lily, yes, Lily, stood and told her story. No script, no fear. "She didn't growl at me," she said, her voice soft but firm. "She waited, and when the bad animals came back, she didn't run. So I didn't either." Cole stood behind her, arms folded, nodding slowly. Walter beamed. Elena wiped a smudge off her cheek that definitely wasn't a tear. Savannah never returned to the wild. She didn't need to. She now lived in a large, protected territory on the edge of the canyon's reserve, not fenced in, but bound by natural barriers, where she could roam freely and sleep beneath the stars she had once guarded Lily under. Each weekend, Walter and Lily visited her. Sometimes they sat silently on the observation hill. Sometimes Lily would read to her simple stories about friendship and trees. Savannah didn't respond in human ways, but her presence was steady, unbothered, as if she knew she was home. And once, just once, she stood and walked to the edge of the brush, where Lily waited. Their eyes met. It wasn't a roar, but it was something that echoed far beyond the cliffs of Zion. Sometimes, the fiercest protectors come not with weapons or words, but with silence, loyalty, and a roar that rises when it matters most. Savannah wasn't just a lion. She was a reminder that miracles still walk among us, often on four legs, and that even in the wildest places, love can speak louder than fear. Maybe it was instinct, maybe it was fate, or maybe it was something greater. A hand from God, guiding a lost child to the one creature who wouldn't leave her behind, in a world so full of noise and division. This story calls us back to something simpler: faith, connection, and the courage to protect what's sacred, no matter the cost. If this story moved your heart, please share it with someone who needs hope today. Comment below if you believe God still works through the most unexpected vessels. Write amen if you believe that kindness, even from a lion, is never lost on the world. And if you want more stories that remind you of the quiet miracles in life, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to this channel. May God bless you and your loved ones, today and always.